Very good morning to all of you. It's such a joy to see all of you here. It's a Sunday morning, not always very easy after a long, hard week to get up early in the morning and come for this session. So, the very fact that you made the effort shows that you have the determination to create that inner transformation, which is what we are all here to do. Before we begin, I would like to invite our special dignitaries, Nayaswami, Jyotish, and Devi, the global spiritual directors of Ananda worldwide, and Dhyanaji and Adityaji, co-spiritual directors of Ananda's work in India. So I would like you to please come on stage and help us light the lamp. I may request everybody else to also please stand up. Please. Want me to light? It's good. I just want, is it on? I just want to spend a few minutes talking about who we are and why we are really gathered, why all of us are really gathered here. As you can see, there is a picture on stage which hopefully many of you will recognize, especially the new people. How many of you have heard about Paramahansa Yogananda before? Okay, great. How many of you have read the book Autobiography of a Yogi? More specifically, the new people? Okay. So, very few. As some of you may be knowing already, Autobiography of a Yogi is a great spiritual classic, a book that has transformed and inspired millions of people worldwide to really undertake this whole quest for the search for meaning in life and spiritual journey. And today we have the good fortune of having with us Nayaswami Jyotish and Devi ji, who have been practicing Kriya Yoga, the techniques which have been given by Paramahansa Yogananda ji in that book for more than 50 years each. They are They are global renowned spiritual directors and leaders, as I mentioned, of Ananda Sangha worldwide, a movement which was started by Swami Kriyananda ji, who is a direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda, and he established Ananda in 1969 to share the teachings of Yogananda ji throughout the world. And Nayaswami Jyotish and Devi ji, they traveled worldwide, inspiring thousands of individuals to really help them find that inner peace and joy, that success in every aspect of life, whether it is your career, your work, your relationships, your personal life, etc. And in recognition of their efforts and dedication, they have also been conferred with the Global Peace Ambassador Award by UN. And between them, they have co-authored many spiritual books together. And one such series of books that they have authored together goes by the name Touch, the Touch series. They have written 6 books on Touch series so far, 5 of them being Touch of Light, Peace, Joy, Love, and Divine Wisdom. And today, with all of us, they will be unveiling their 6th book called Touch of Inner Power. So, so without any further ado, I would now like to invite both of them to please come and share their thoughts on this subject.
Thank you. Thank you, friends, for making the effort to come today. I know some have traveled from long distances, and it's a great joy to be together. Paramahansa Yogananda said, "No time is wasted when spent speaking of God." And so, speaking today of divine truths, it's always a joy. Devi and I are this is our last public talk of a 3-month long world tour in Europe, in Germany, and many places here in India. And it's been a great joy to be able to share these truths. We have received so much from the divine sources from Swami Kriyananda, who is our direct teacher for more than 50 years. And he, of course, in turn, was a direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda and received great teachings from him. In our lifetime, we've seen the light of their teachings.
Should I move this down a bit? Okay.
Okay. She wants the cameras. Yeah, wants the cameras to be able to capture my elegant beard. Don't want the microphone hiding that. So we've been sharing these truths around the world. And today, as we've heard, we're launching this book, Touch of Inner Power. And so we thought what we would do is take One of these these are weekly blogs. Devi and I have ever since Swamiji, ours we call Swami Kriyananda Swamiji, uh, he's a dear friend and guide for us. Swamiji passed in 2013. And since that time, Devi and I have been writing these blogs on a weekly basis. So we've now written over 500 in total of these blogs. And it was for a while every 2 years and now every 1 year. We compile those blogs because people wrote us and said, we received the blog on our computer or on our phone, but we don't keep it there. Can't you compile them into a book that we can keep more permanently? And so we've started this series of books. As we've said, today we're launching Touch of Inner Power. So I thought we would each start by reading a few paragraphs from one of these blogs, and then we'll expand on it. But it'll give you a sense of what they're like. They're our attempt to take these high ancient teachings, the Vedic teachings of India, to take these truths, but then to put them in a very practical, very simple, very assimilable manner so that they can become a part of our living reality, not just something that was a truth from long ago. So this is from a blog written April 1st, 2022, called A Spiritual Report Card. Divine Mother is a master magician. There's a trick that all magicians use. The obvious hides the hidden. A big movement attracts our attention while the real magic is happening behind the scenes. God hides his presence, entertaining us with the beauties and terrors of this world. He gives us challenges, but we rarely understand that the real test is happening behind the scenes in our consciousness. What befalls us in life is not especially meaningful, but how we react to our challenges and what we become because of them is of vital importance. As Paramahansa Yogananda's most advanced woman disciple, Sister Gyanamata said, Lord, change no circumstances in my life, change me. Let us take, for example, the COVID years, when everyone in the world faced difficult tests. To the question, how did you do during COVID? A typical answer might be something like this. I did pretty well. No one in my family died, and I was able to keep working. The isolation part was hard, but the government restrictions really got under my skin. This is a good example of missing the point. The devotee who knows that this is a trick question might answer more like this. I did pretty well. I deepened my faith in God, even though my uncle died. My heart stayed open and even expanded with compassion for those who were suffering, and I did everything I could to help others. So the point here being is that whatever happens in our life, the circumstances, the tests that we go through, the difficulties we face, the people who come into our lives, all of those things are the magician's trick to keep us engaged, while behind the scenes, the only real question is, what did it do to our consciousness? When we die, when we leave this earth, which is going to be, for everyone sitting in this room, is going to be a few years, a few decades, but everyone in this world is going to leave this scene, and the only thing we take with us, we can't take possessions, we can't take family, we can't take anything except our consciousness. And so if we understand that everything is about consciousness, then we have at least picked up the question by the right string. And then we can begin to work on that. So I mentioned the COVID years. There was a beautiful example of a friend of ours who lives in Gurgaon, India. He had a teenage son that he loved very much, but the teenage son had battled cancer. And finally, during the COVID years, about 2021 or something in that area, that son passed away. 2 weeks later, this man's father passed away from COVID. Now, one would think that is a terrible tragedy. And of course it is. There's no denying that these things hit us, affect us deeply. But his response to that tragedy, that's where the real value of living correctly comes in. What was his response to that? He said, if I just stay here thinking about my loss, thinking about myself, I'll just spiral down and down and down. He called our center, our head, Nayaswami Dhyana, and he said, is there any way I can help others that are suffering during this time? We were getting hundreds of calls from people who were going through difficulties at the height of that terrible pandemic. And so she said, well, we have a hotline, and people are calling that hotline day and night. If you would like to, you could answer the hotline. And so this man answered the hotline during those times of his own personal loss, and he helped others who were going through their personal loss. Now that is the way to answer the magician's trick of keeping our minds outward, and to ask the question, what actions can I take? What can I do? How can I behave that will uplift my consciousness? And if we can catch that correctly, then we can begin to make right choices in life. We often get asked, Devi and I, in fact, we're going to have a question and answer period later. I probably shouldn't tell you not to ask this, but anyway, we often get asked questions like, what should I do at work when I have a coworker who's trying to take all the credit? Or I was thinking of getting a new job, but it would be more responsibility. What do you think I should do? And we approach the questions, especially the big questions in our life, we approach them in an outward way. Should I take this new job because I'll make more money, it'll have a higher position, I'll feel better about myself, I can buy a bigger house, I can get a new car, all of that. That is the wrong way to address a question like that. Here's the right way. I've been offered a new job. What will it do to my consciousness if I take that job? Will it expand my consciousness? Will it uplift my consciousness? Perhaps if I get more money from that, will it expand my ability to help others? That's the way to pick up a question like this. Because if we think only in an outward way, as I said at the beginning of this blog, that is the magician. Divine Mother is a master magician, and she keeps us entranced in thinking about the outer results of these things. And very rarely do we come to our senses and ask the real question, what will happen to my consciousness? But when we begin to ask that question, then obviously the next question that comes is not to be just inanimate participant in the storms and trials of life tossing us around, but how can I guide the boat of my consciousness? How can I expand my consciousness? How can I uplift my consciousness? And that, my friends, takes us to the question, which is how Patanjali started his great treatise of the Yoga Sutras. He came, his very first sentence is, and now we come to the study of the science of yoga. Because after you've asked why, after you've asked what, then the next question is how. Why should I change my consciousness? Well, you should change it because that's the only thing you're going to take with you. If you don't work on that, what real value does your life have if you don't end this incarnation with a greater, more uplifted, more expanded consciousness than you came into it? But if you don't ask that question, then you don't come to the next question, which is, all right, how can I change my consciousness? And that brings us to the study of the science of yoga, which is the ancient Yogananda, our Param Guru. His very first talk in America, he was invited to come over to America and give a talk by a group there. His very first talk was the science of religion. And in that talk, he talked about how religion is not just attitudes, not just superstition, not just outer ritual, but there's a science to it. And the science of religion is the science of how we change our consciousness, and especially yoga, and most especially meditation, is the prime way to change our consciousness. Because if we can calm our mind sufficiently, and we have many techniques of yoga, most of the techniques that we teach, Ananda Sangha has taught meditation techniques ever since we came into existence. My very first contact with my teacher, Swami Kriyananda, I took a course on how to meditate, a 6-week course on how to meditate, and received techniques of meditation. There are many paths of meditation, but most of them have one common technique that almost all paths, different teachers, different masters, almost all of them have one common technique that they use, and that is observing the breath, watching the breath. Why should we watch the breath? Well, we're trying to get away from the magician's big trick of keeping us engaged outside of ourselves. We're trying to come back in to our own self, into our own consciousness. And if you sit to meditate and all you're thinking about is a bunch of projects I need to do, or why did that person say that about me? I'm going to think up a good response and I'm going to really get him when I get into the office. And that isn't meditation. So what do we do if the mind has the tendency, which it does, the monkey mind has the tendency to be scattered and to be outward? How do we counterbalance that? We begin to think about something or focus on something that isn't outside of ourselves. Now, there are different things we could do, but the easiest one is to focus on the breath. Just observe the inhalation and the exhalation. The inhalation and the exhalation. If you do that, then your mind won't roam outward in an outward direction. A spiritual teacher used a wonderful image. He said that when a mahout would drive his elephant through a village, the elephant would grab some bananas here and grab some apples there. And the village shopkeepers, of course, hated the fact that he was coming through the little narrow lane. And so what the mahout did was he gave that elephant a little piece of bamboo about that long, and he taught him to hold it proudly in his trunk like that. And then when he walked through, he didn't grab this and grab that. So we need some little piece of bamboo to hold up, to focus our mind so it isn't going hither and yon all the time. And so the breath becomes this piece of bamboo. But there's a science. Remember Yogananda's first talk, the science of religion? There's a whole science behind the practices, the techniques of yoga and meditation. The mind and the breath and the prana, the energy, are all interrelated. And so as we calm the breath, the energy also calms and the mind calms down. When you get frightened, what is the first thing that happens when you're frightened? You take a big breath, you gasp, you start breathing hard, your mind is upset, your emotions are involved. But if you can control the breath, in fact, we had a friend who was the person who was in charge of training all of the rookie policemen in the city of San Francisco. And so, as a trainer of the policemen, he was also a yogi. He practiced the same path that we did. But he couldn't teach the rookie policemen yoga and meditation, at least not in those days. This was the 1960s. Today, he probably could, athletes and policemen and everybody practices meditation now. But in those days, not so much. But what he did teach them is if you're in a tense situation, don't try to control the situation. Take control of yourself. And the way to do that is just inhale deeply, hold your breath a little while, and then exhale. Do that 5 times. And your consciousness will come right back. You'll become calm. And the person that you're interacting with will also become calm. And he told us a story where he was on a drug raid. This was before he was a trainer. And he chased a man up into a dark hall, and the man turned around, had a shotgun, and it was pointed at him. Very, very tense situation. Our friend Mike, he said, I did exactly what I taught my policemen to do. I stopped. I just got centered. I did this deep breathing. And that immediately calmed me. And because I was calm, the man facing me also calmed down. And then slowly I held my hand out, and his shoulders slumped, and he handed over the shotgun. Well, probably we aren't going to face quite that situation, but you might face an angry coworker or a difficult meeting at the office, or all of us face some tense situation. Take control of yourself before you try to take control of the situation. Because if you don't, it's just going to escalate. You all know this. Really, the science of yoga is simply the art of reminding you all of what you already know. Our souls know these truths, and they follow these truths. They have absorbed this. But coming back to this question about the science of religion, there's a reason why we watch the breath, because that also calms the prana, the flow of prana in the spine. And as we control that flow of prana, the inhalation, every time we inhale, there's a movement of prana up the subtle spine. Every time we exhale, it comes down. And that goes on from the very first breath we take when we come into this world to the very last breath before we leave this world. That's the one thing that stays with us always, and it's that movement of prana. At the time of death, that prana exits the body, and the soul exits the body. And what do we take with us? Our consciousness, and that's all. And so, if that is the final thing that we take with us, then it would behoove us to work on our consciousness before what Swami Kriyananda called the moment of death. he called that the final exam. And we should prepare for that final exam. In fact, there's a good joke. I like to tell jokes. It's one of the fun things about having the microphone. You can do what you want. So there was this merchant, very kind of materialistic merchant, and he heard this truth that if you think of God at the time that you die, then you will go to the realm of the gods. And he thought, well, that's good. How am I going to think of God when I die? He said, I know. I'll name all of my children a different name of God, because at the time I die, certainly they'll all be gathered around me. So Durga and Parvati and Rama and Sita, Krishna, and all names of gods and avatars. And so the time for his passing came, and he was just on his deathbed. He said, oh, Parvati, you're here. Oh, Rama, you're here. Krishna, you're here too. You're all here. Who's minding the store? We're losing all those sales. And then falls over and dies. So you can't game these spiritual truths, but you can indeed prepare yourself to think of God when you die by thinking of God when you're alive. I mean, what could be a simpler truth than that? But how many of us think of God? How many of us think of God once a day? I won't ask you to raise your hands. Might be embarrassing. But how many of us think of God once a day? How many of us think of God 5 times a day? How many of us think of God once every hour? Not many people in this world do that. The mind is outward on the magician's outward tricks. So what meditation does, the practice of watching the breath, brings us inside of ourselves, away from the distractions of the outer world. And if we can get inside and practice this observing the breath, we do it with a mantra, bija mantra called Hong Sa. And so as the breath comes in, we silently say Hong. As it goes out, Sa. So we do that. That's a fundamental meditation practice. If we can do that correctly, it brings the mind into a state of peace where it isn't reacting to the outer world. And once the mind is in a state of peace and our consciousness is interiorized, then we can practice true meditation, which Paramahansa Yogananda defined as meditation is the deep focus on God or on one of the qualities of God. So if the mind is calm, we can hear the sound of Om, which is the creative force of the universe. We can see light in the forehead, which is the vibratory aspect of creation. We can feel peace, we can feel calmness. And if we can calm our mind and feel peace and hold that, then the next thing that follows from that is that we can feel the innate bliss of our own being. We're extensions of God, who the Adi Shankara defined God as Sat Chit Ananda. Many of you have probably heard that phrase, Sat Chit Ananda, Sat existence, Chit consciousness, Ananda bliss. Yogananda refined it, said ever new bliss, ever new joy, because he didn't want us thinking that joy somehow got old and unappealing. It's ever new, ever blissful. But if we can calm the mind sufficiently, then we can go into deeper meditation and feel the bliss of our own being. Now, residing in the bliss of our own being, that is the fastest and most effective way to change our consciousness, because we're residing now in our own true consciousness, not the outward show, not the dream of Maya, but our own true consciousness, which is ever blissful, ever expanding, ever calm and peaceful. And when we do that, then we also become a force of good and light into the world. All of us can look around and see that this world needs some uplifting consciousness. We can't depend on others to uplift the world or change the world. And we won't help by shaking our finger at them for not doing that. If we want an uplifting change to come to this world, we have to become that change that we want before we can expect others to do so. And so by changing our consciousness, we change the world around us. And as thousands and millions of us do this, then that aura of peace and joy and uplifting consciousness begins to change all of society around us. No other change. In our life, no change is going to be permanent except a change of consciousness. And extend that in this world, no change, no difference of electing this official or that official. The American elections are in 10 days. We're going back into this big turmoil in America. Honestly, is it going to uplift the consciousness of the world which candidate wins? Not permanently. Which war party wins which war? Is that going to change the world? Not permanently. It's been going on for thousands of years. Officials and wars and victors and losers. That doesn't really do anything. Uplift consciousness. Change our consciousness. And we have done our part in changing the world. God bless you.
Thank you, Jyotish. That was wonderful. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. As Mitesh mentioned, we've been traveling and teaching for the last 3 months. And this is our last public talk. So we're kind of celebrating. So we want you to celebrate with us as well. So as we've mentioned, part of what's happening today is we'll be launching the latest in our series of books, Touch of Inner Power, and we have signed copies over there if you're interested. But I wanted to start by talking a little bit about world history and changes. Those of you who know American history, the American Revolution was in 1776 when America, as our brothers and sisters in India did, broke off the shackles of the British Empire. But then there was another American Revolution, less well known. And this happened in 1920. And a man, a humble, simple man, traveling alone from India, leaving from Mumbai on a boat, 2-month voyage, arrived in Boston Harbor, where a lot of the American Revolution happened in 1776, the Boston Tea Party. Well, this was a different kind of tea party. This was the Indian Tea Party that came. And Yogananda ji arrived on the shores of America. And while on board, he gave a talk on board the ship. And it really defined in many ways what he brought to America, the revolution. His talk was the battle of life and how to fight it. Up to this time in America, yoga was very little known. Meditation was very little known. You heard a little bit prayer and meditation in the monasteries and so forth. But the image Westerners had of yoga and meditation was, gaunt ascetics with loincloths up in the Himalayas. It wasn't something that they felt they could be involved in. But Yogananda brought a revolution to America, and he showed, and he brought the understanding of the inner power that is innate in every person. You don't have to starve yourself or withdraw from the world. You need to release your own highest potential. And he did this in thousands of ways. He had what he called he was a warrior. He was a great warrior of many lifetimes. He said in Mahabharata, he was Arjuna, the great warrior. He told also he was William the Conqueror, who in another lifetime, who established the British realm and so forth. But what he brought was this dynamic energy. And he transformed the consciousness of America little by little. When he started teaching, no one meditated in America. Now, 35 million people in America meditate every day. Because, yeah, isn't that marvelous? Because they realized it's not withdrawing from the world, it's awakening your own potential. And it's claiming your own power. Yogananda would, once he was in, I believe it was New York City, and he was giving a lecture. And he said, I want to show you the inner power. And there were 5 burly New York policemen, and he called them up on the stage. And he stood with his back against the wall, and he said, I want you all to press on me as hard as you can so I can't move. And so these big policemen were doing that. And Yogananda just arched his back, projecting so much power. He knocked all 5 policemen off the stage, and people began to see there's something to this. It isn't just running away from life. It gives you the strength. He said, Yogananda said, in 1 little gram of flesh, a pinch of flesh, there's enough power to power the city of Chicago for a week. And yet we're tired, we can't do this. And so what he was doing was showing people, you don't know what you're capable of. You don't know what your mind is capable of. And his themes were about willpower and energy and magnetism. And he transformed the culture. That was really, from my perspective, the true American Revolution was when Yogananda came to the West. And he then, in those of us who have been practicing these teachings following, then we came and began sharing in India. And the response was amazing. We've taught all over the world, but there's no place like India because it's in your DNA. You just get it. And it's just so beautiful to see the response. And we'll be leaving physically India in a few days, going back to the US. We have some books that we're working on. But being in India, we come every year, we've come for years and years, it has changed our life and has given us an appreciation of how God can be a part of every aspect of life. So with that preamble, I'd like to read part of a blog that I wrote, and then we'll talk about it some more. This is called, There Is No Bad Karma. The old woman lay in bed critically ill and in great pain. For her daughter, who was providing loving care, seeing her mother's physical suffering was hard to bear. Even more difficult, though, was seeing her mental anguish. She kept repeating, I must have very bad karma to be in such pain. God must be very displeased with me. Seeking guidance, the daughter asked a friend of ours what she could say to comfort her mother. He wrote back, quote, Tell her there is no bad karma. There is only good karma because everything comes to take us toward God. When she read the letter to her mother, the old woman said, "Is it so? Then it's okay. I'll keep that in mind at all times." Those few reassuring words made a huge difference for her. She was able to remain tranquil despite her suffering, and shortly afterward, she peacefully left the body. When adverse circumstances come, we may feel overwhelmed or even defeated by the thought we're being punished through our bad karma. Remember that there are two related principles that God has put into play to help us move towards freedom: free will and the law of karma. So, free will and the law of karma. If we get too caught up, karma, oh, it's my bad karma, we become immobilized. But that's what Yogananda came to show us. He said, karma, if you created it, you can undo it. And he gave us techniques. And this is where inner power comes in. Because if we understand that we are not victims of our past, we can determine the course of our future. One of Master's disciples asked him once, "If I just said that I was free, my soul was free, I wouldn't be, would I?" And Yogananda said, "You've answered your own question. You said I wouldn't be." But if we say it with enough conviction, and that's why meditation is important, because it gives you the power of inner focus. If you say it with enough conviction, then you are free. Bit by bit, we move out of the realm of victim consciousness and we take charge of our own life. That's such an exciting thing. And we have been through many adventures in our life. And when I look back at our life, many things that have happened difficult and how we face them, I just say, every moment spent in meditation has been a power source to rejuvenate us. Some of you know the story. Where our home base is in Northern California. We have a beautiful spiritual community there that our founder, Swami Kriyananda, started. We have 800 acres, 300 people live there full time. We have schools and businesses and homes and a beautiful yoga retreat where people come from all over the world. But it's also a high-risk fire area because it's in a forested area. And in 1976, this was 7 years into the community's existence, a forest fire came through and it burnt everything to the ground. We lost everything. Our house was burnt to the ground. We had a newborn child at the time, 11 days old. We lost everything we had. And that day that the fire came, and I share this story not to focus on us, but the power of positive thinking and how it can help you overcome any challenge. So Jyotish was up in the area of our house trying to save the house, which was impossible. And I had actually taken the little new baby to the doctor for a checkup. And so I was driving home. We live about a half hour outside of the nearest town. And I saw this smoke in the air. And I thought, oh, what's that? That's near Ananda. And then I kept driving and that's where Ananda is. And then and there was a police roadblock in the road. And they said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, you can't get through. There's a big fire." And I said, "I'm sorry, I'm getting through." And I drove through the police roadblock. But then I got there and it was like a mad scene, airplanes were going over, dropping flame retardant. And people were just running everywhere. We had a dairy and the cows and the goats were running all over. But then I didn't know if Jyotish was alive. We didn't know, anything. But then I saw him coming down the hill from where our house was. And he had built this house. It was a lovely geodesic dome that burnt to the ground. And But the one flaw, and we have a different of opinion on it, but it leaked quite badly because Jyotish is, he asserts he's a really good carpenter, but in any case, it leaked quite badly. And so he saw me, I saw him. We had lost everything. The community was destroyed, everything we've been working for nearly 10 years. And he looked at me and he said, you know what? We don't have to worry about those leaks anymore. And we both just started laughing. And that's discovering your own inner power, to be able to face whatever comes in life and just to say, there's always a way to move forward. One of the things that Yogananda gave us some tools and techniques for how to overcome karma and develop our inner power. One, and Jyotish touched on it, was finding ways to serve other people. When you're serving other people, you forget about yourself. No matter how, like this man we talked about who had lost his family, he was on the hotline day and night comforting other people who had also sustained losses. We heard a beautiful story. We heard a talk given by the late Mother Teresa of Calcutta, and you all know the work she did. And she told the story of a young nun who had been on the street looking for people who needed help. And she found this man dying, laying on the street, homeless. And his whole body was riddled with some kind of a disease. And when she tried to lift him up, his skin just kind of peeled off his body, you know, it was, and off his back onto the street. And she carried him back to the hospital they had and cleaned him and washed him, put him in a clean bed. And he looked at her and he said, I lived like an animal, but I'm dying like an angel. And he died shortly after that. And then Mother Teresa told the story. She said, because this was a young woman new to their convent, and she said, what was it like for you when you were serving that man? Because his body was just falling apart as you cleaned him. And she said, you know, Mother, I've never felt God's presence so strongly as in those moments I was serving that man. And so in service, no matter how hard it is, you forget others. It reminds me, this is a beautiful story, speaking of COVID, we have two dear friends, I don't think they're here today, they're from Pune, husband and wife doctors, Dr. Amar and Dr. Mansi. And during the height of COVID, they worked in the COVID ward. And they're both young people, they have two young daughters. And at one point, Mansi, the wife, she was getting very discouraged because they had no medicine, they had no way to help people. They were just essentially helping them to die. And she got very discouraged and she just said, I can't keep doing this, I can't go on. And then that night, she had a dream. And Master, our Guruji, Yogananda came to her in the dream. And he was in the hospital and he had the doctor's clothes on. And he just said, we have to keep busy, we have to keep busy. And so she did. They were in there. And then she began taking little balls of mud and forming them in the dream, forming them into little babies. And when she would hold them, they would be fine. And then when she would put them down, they would just dissolve. And then she looked at Master in the dream and she said, what is this? And he said, don't you understand? Life and death, it's just a dream. When you hold the little mud in your hands, it becomes alive. When you put it down, it dissolves. So it is with all these people. When I'm holding them in life, then they keep going. When it's time for them to go, they dissolve. And it just gave her the ability to keep going and serving night and day in that COVID ward. And she and her husband both got COVID, but they not seriously. But anyway, it's just the thought that when we begin looking in all serving and finding God's presence in that service, then it transmutes our karma. If we just think about ourselves all the time, then karma has a death grip on us. And we don't, like Jyotish was saying, the magician that makes us think that I'm important. What happens to me is of primary importance. It's not. We're nothing. We're just little balls of mud that God holds in his hand for a while and then we dissolve. But our soul, that's what we need to awaken, is the power of our soul. Service is one way. Asserting willpower. Master said, and I'll just quote this because I don't want to misquote it. I took out the page. Oh, no, it's there. Okay, Master said, there's been too much emphasis on karma. Karma, karma, they cry. It's my karma. I can do nothing about it. Karma, then Master says, absurd. Karma is merely action. Whatever has been done can just as certainly be undone. That's what Yogananda says. So remember that. Whenever you feel like, well, I can't, it's my karma. If you did it, you can undo it. It's as simple as that. It's just mathematics. You put in 5 hours of selfishness, you get back 5 hours of feeling inadequate. You put in 5 hours of thinking of others, you get back 5 hours of feeling uplifted. Simple mathematics. So, and this is what Yogananda came to show us. It's practical, it's doable. We are not victims. So using free will, finding courage in all of life's circumstances, no matter what happens, you just say, I can find the way out of this. And there's always a way. There's always a way. And then the power of meditation. Jyotish talked about it quite a bit. But to discover, meditation isn't, we have a misconception about it. We think that it's withdrawing from the world, avoiding issues, not being able to face. Meditation is the most creative, dynamic, engaging, ever new process. We've been doing it for more than 50 years, 55 years, every day. And I won't tell you how old we are because people don't believe it, but well, together we're more than 150 years old. But it ever new renews you. So many times, it's been a busy time in my life. I felt I can't keep going. And then we'll just sit and meditate and get up. Oh, what's the problem? You just keep going. And not out of grimness, but because you've recharged your energy. Master talked a whole lot. One of his core teachings is the teachings of Kriya Yoga. And what we do with Kriya Yoga, it's a pranayama technique, and you can learn it. We teach it at our centers here in Mumbai and throughout India and online and in books, readily accessible. But it helps you to recharge the whole being because the spine is the river of consciousness. Not just the physical nerves, but there's an astral spine, a spine of energy. And this is when the soul, when the little body is conceived, the power of divine prana enters in. And that is it's really what keeps body and soul together, the power of prana in the spine. And the more we become aware of it, the more we can determine our own life with power. Our teacher, Swami Kriyananda, he had a very distinct way of walking. He had the most direct spine I've ever seen in my life, and it was from a lifelong practice of Kriya Yoga. He chose the name Kriyananda, which means bliss through the practice of Kriya. But interestingly, Kriya is the same etymological root as karma in Sanskrit. But karma is action that generates more reaction. Kriya is action that nullifies karma. And so the most powerful way to overcome your karma are through these deep yogic practices. Again, not to withdraw, but to live life dynamically. And then finally, I'll close with one other way to enhance your inner power, and that's a relationship with a guru. Whatever path you follow, that's according to your own spiritual soul inclination. You know, there's one God, many religions, but one God. But then, according to human needs at different times, these gurus descend to be channels for God, to help us individually. Yesterday, we met with a group of people, new disciples, and one of my favorite things to do in talking with people is ask them, how did you come on the path? What was the story? And some of you were there. Everyone has a different story, but it's the same story. I wasn't fulfilled. I was looking for something. I'd lost a loved one. I couldn't find meaning in life. And then Autobiography of a Yogi came into my life. One woman told a story. I don't see her today. I won't say her name. But she said she was having a lot of serious heart problems and they couldn't really diagnose it. And they were going to put some stents in and put her on heavy medication. But she heard about a doctor and she went to see him and he did all sorts of tests. And then he reached in his drawer. He said, I'm not going to prescribe any medicine for you or any intervention or surgery. This is what I'm going to recommend. And he held up Autobiography of a Yogi. He said, this is your medicine. She started reading it, began following this path. Her health was totally improved. So following a true spiritual path, because, you know, Yogananda's most advanced disciple in America was a man that he gave the name Rajarsi Janakananda. He was a brilliant man. He was a self-made millionaire. He was on the self-made, not inherited, on the board of many directors, big businesses across the country. But when he found Master, he was already had his career established. He was nervous, he was anxious, but he had this deep connection with Yogananda. And within 7 years, practicing Yogananda's techniques and through the Guru's grace, he was able to achieve the highest states of samadhi, Westerner, and would just remain in that high state of elevation for long periods of time. But Swami tells the story, our Swami, that one time Master said to him, because even though he was a great soul on many, many levels, very humble man, one time Master said, don't forget where your power comes from, Rajarsi. And Rajarsi said, I won't, sir, it comes from you. And when we speak of inner power, we have to remember it can go in two ways. We can, there's a lot of self-help and how to accomplish this and how to that, but that's of the ego. That's not really what we're talking about. The real inner power is to realize that it's God's power within us. And that's what helps us to accomplish anything in life and everything in life. And so the more Master said, wonderful quote, he said, if you're trying to find your way forward and you're walking on a little path that has filled with quicksand, you'll get bogged down. But the Guru has a paved road right next to it. Walk on the road that he's paved for you and you'll get to where you're going. So my friends, just to conclude, we're so much more than we experience in the moment. It's never too late in life, whether you're 20 years old or 80 years old, to start saying, I want to discover my own highest potential. And these are ways you can do it with devotion for God, with love for God, with putting out energy, serving others, using willpower, but most of all, acknowledging that there is a great, great underlying power of goodness in the universe, and we are all a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyotish and Devi, for this very inspirational talk. I must say, you have shared the most important essences of all the timeless and the great teachings which have been handed out to us over thousands of years. And the very fact that many of us are part of the corporate world, while it's very heartening to know that we don't need to withdraw from this world to be able to practice these teachings, we would.
Yeah.
Rima, you can keep the table.
My question, the group of people are spreading message, inner power, and giving teachings in India. So have you ever tried to spread your message, Western countries and Arab countries, because they are war-minded people and they require your message very required. How far you have tried to spread your messages in Western countries as well as in Arab countries?
Well, we've certainly spread the message throughout Western countries. When our work started in Ananda, it started in 1969 in California. At that time, Ananda, which now is a worldwide organization, at that time, Ananda was contained in one single apartment, which was our Swami's apartment in San Francisco. Since that time, it has spread. We have many communities throughout America. We have communities in Canada, in South America. We have a big work and community in Assisi, Italy, which serves all of Europe. The last count we had, there are several million people who are part of the Ananda Sangha. Now, the majority of those are in Western countries, although I must say India is growing fast and going to overtake everything else within a few years now. But nonetheless, Ananda is spreading all over the world. And it isn't important to think so much of an organization. I mean, obviously, an organization has its importance, but Yogananda said the organization is like a beehive. Of what good is the beehive unless there's honey in that hive? And so it's these great teachings that are reaching people and changing lives. Devi and I have, as she said, been with Ananda for more than 55 years now, and we've seen thousands and thousands of people that have had their lives changed and uplifted. That's what's important, not just the numbers, because a Bollywood actor can have lots and lots of people who look at him, but is their uplifting consciousness. But yes, so the quick answer is yes, these teachings are spreading around the Western countries as well as around India. And in India, we have centers in almost all of the major cities now and many meditation groups all around. And that's expanding rapidly also.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll just add one thing that I meant to mention earlier. Yogananda predicted that he brought the teachings to the West, they would be brought back to India, and then he said, lion-like swamis will be coming out of India to fill the world. So we're waiting for all of you lion-like swamis to come and begin spreading it throughout the world.
So practice roaring, all you know.
Okay, another
Okay,
question.
any other questions?
What is the difference or what is the timeline between our individual breath cycles and prana?
I couldn't understand.
I didn't. What is the
Difference between breath and prana.
okay between breath and prana? There's a subtle, there's an outward connection and a more subtle connection. The outward connection is we can all see that our breath affects our mood. Isn't that true? If you're going into an interview and you're slumped down and you're barely breathing and you're thinking, oh, I can't do this. But if you stand up and start breathing deeply and bring your posture correct, that your elevated consciousness and mood is there. But there's a more subtle connection too, that the real breath is the movement of prana in the spine, an up and down movement. So the outer breath depends on the movement of prana up in the spine, that causes inhalation, and the downward movement is exhalation. And so the science of yoga works with both the outer breath and the inner breath. And so by doing pranayama techniques of breathing techniques, where we say control the breath, the simple one is inhale to the count of 8, hold 8, exhale 8. That will help calm the mind and regularize the energy. Many different pranayama techniques having to do with breath, but the real science is the inner science of the movement of prana in the subtle spine.
Okay. Another question. Aditya, did you have?
Okay. So many times when somebody gets power, you feel important or self-important. But here you're saying on the spiritual path, the saints, Rajarsi Janakananda, had so much power, but on the other hand, they became childlike or humble, even having a sense of humor or lightness. So how can that happen when you're getting more power? How are you becoming more childlike, yet remaining powerful?
Okay. Once someone said to Yogananda, he said, your detractors are saying that you've lost your powers. And Yogananda said, I don't know that I ever had any powers. And there's a difference between powers and inner power. Powers is something that you see big influential people using and, you know, so forth. But inner power is something that the more you develop it, the more you know where it comes from and that it's not yours, that it's God's flowing through you. And all you can do in that, when you begin experiencing that, is just to say, I'm nothing, Lord, you're everything. And whatever I'm able to do, it's only through your grace. And Swami Kriyananda, who was a man of extraordinary accomplishments, he was a brilliant man, wrote 150 books, composed 400 pieces of music, lectured in many different languages. But when they would give him a big flowery introduction before one of his speeches, he said, I feel like a little mouse running out on the stage because people are expecting this big thing. And he never saw himself like that. He just saw himself as being able to share God's presence with other people. And so just remember that the practice of yoga and meditation, rather than, I mean, you see people, you see teachers, yoga teachers, and people with big followings, but there's sometimes you can see they're kind of full of themselves, you know. That's not a true teacher. A true teacher is able to say, I'm not important, but God is important. And whenever people would touch Yogananda's feet, he would always go like that. I just give it to you, God. So it's so beautiful to see people demonstrating that level of humility and understanding.
Yes, as David G was saying, there's power that comes from the expression of ego and pride and magnetism and charisma. And there is some power in that. But in relation to the totality of power, it's a little thimble out of the ocean. The real essence of the spiritual path is not to expand your ego, it's to dissolve the ego, to make it completely disappear, and to see that you don't really exist as something separate from God. That's the definition of yoga, is that we don't exist except as an extension of God, and to get rid of that separation. So all great saints begin to get more and more transparent in terms of their sense of self-egoic importance. There was a great saint of this century, or the last century, in Italy, named Padre Pio. Many miracles involved with Padre Pio. Wonderful soul. But people would come to him and well, I can tell you a good story. One time a politician came to him because he was very popular with the Italians, and so they were always looking for photo ops. And so this politician came because he wanted to have his picture taken with Padre Pio for an upcoming election. And he had the police motorcycles leading the car and a big limousine with flags on it. And he came up and he got out of the car and he was coming up and to have his picture taken with Padre Pio. And Padre Pio said, "Get out of here. In my day, the police used to chase the crooks. They didn't lead them." so I refused him. But in any case, Padre Pio was a true saint. But somebody asked him about, how do you get your powers? And Padre Pio said, "I don't have any powers. I can't do any miracles. I'm just a monk who prays. I pray for people. If God wants to do something through my prayers, that's up to him. But it isn't me. I'm just a monk who prays." And so that's what a great saint is. They don't have an ego. One time, someone praised Yogananda for his humility, and Yogananda didn't say, "Oh, yes, I'm very humble. Look at me. I'm the most humble person I know." He said, "How can there be humility when there is no consciousness of ego?" And so he didn't see himself as an individual, just an expression of God. And so that's the real power. And everything else is just some borrowed little power that we express for maybe one life. And then the next life, if we're proud of it, we'll have to experience the opposite of having a life where we're powerless. Maybe we live on the street. But it's all got to balance out. Ultimately, there is only one doer, one actor, and that's God, playing many parts, but writing the drama, directing the drama, acting the drama. And if we as an actor think that we've done something great, then she'll just write another part for us to get that out of our thoughts.
Okay, another question.
Maybe, yeah, one or two more.
Maybe two more questions, if that's okay.
Oh,
We
yeah,
have one
two
over
more.
there on the fourth side. Yeah, fourth row.
There's a gentleman right there standing.
No, I'm Vatan Shah, and presently writing some book on spirituality and religious connection. I have a set of questions, just a small questions. Any resemblance or connectivity between spirituality and astrology? And what will be the effect on mind, heart, and body? One, and the second is how sectarian religious systems help to achieve the spirituality realization.
Thank you. Okay, so three questions.
Okay.
First one,
First one. He worked in three very efficiently. So.
with the first one.
And astrology.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Very good question.
Yeah.
Connection between spirituality and astrology. Swami Kriyananda wrote a book called, if you're writing a book, you can refer to it, called Your Sun's Sign as a Spiritual Guide. And Master also has a chapter, an autobiography of a yogi, in which he talks about astrology. And again, oh, thank you.
Oh, there it
There
is.
it is. They have it. Your sun sign is a spiritual guide. And astrology, again, we can see it in the terms that people think of karma, like, oh, this is my bad period, and this is, so forth. Yogananda said, show me any period of my chart, even the most adverse alignment of the stars, and by my willpower, I will still be able to accomplish whatever I want to accomplish. So we shouldn't see the dictates or the directions given by astrologers as kind of an edict that determines our life. Yogananda also said that according to his chart, his brothers were always trying to get him married, but he knew his destiny was to be others, to be a monk and a Swami. And so he said, his brother, his older brother Ananda, said, according to your chart, you'll be married 3 times. And Yogananda took the chart and he burnt it. And he put the ashes in a bag and put it by his brother's door and said, the seeds of past karma do not germinate when roasted in the fires of Kriya Yoga. So we don't need to be puppets at the whims of our karma. This is indicated in astrology. It can be helpful if you use it in the right way. That's why Swami's book, Using Your Sun Sign. Okay, maybe for example, according to Vedic astrology and Western astrology, I'm a Capricorn, which is the little determined goat. That's a nice image for me. I've used it a lot. You just keep going, you keep going, you keep climbing that mountain no matter how steep it is. So then that's useful. But if you say, oh, I'm a Libra and I'm just I can't find steadiness in life, then it's an adverse effect on you. So look at your chart, work with people who you respect and trust as astrologers, but don't use it as a confining pattern of your life. But it's just karma. That's all it reflects. And everything we've been talking about this morning is how to transcend your karma. So part 1, we take part 2.
Yeah, just very quickly. So at the time of our birth, our chart, we can think of it as we're given a map, but we can choose how we're going to walk along the pathways of that map. So part 2 was?
Part 2, question 2.
Question about satsang and
religious system help to achieve the spirituality?
Does religious satsang? Very, very powerful. There are 3 influences that are very powerful in our life. One is the presence of God and Guru in our life and the teachings that they bring. The second is our own desire and receptivity. But the third is satsang. The more we associate with people who have the same goal as we have, the more we will be magnetically attracted and attract the ideas of that. So if the aspiration that we have is a religious one or spiritual one, we want to, let's say our path is a path of meditation and service. Well, let's say we determine that we want to have in our life regular meditation and somehow a chance to do Guru Seva, service of the Guru. If we're completely alone, we have to depend on our own magnetism. But if we gather together with other people, then that group magnetism helps us when we're in an up period. Everybody goes through ups and downs. When we're in an up period, we'll help steady those around us. When we're in a down period, they'll help steady us. And so satsang is the second most important influence next to the grace of the Guru, and of course our own free will. So it's very, very important.
And just to add, when I first read Autobiography of a Yogi, I was just in my last months before graduating from college. And I tried to read it, but I was involved with my studies and I was preparing for my final exams. And I just couldn't connect with it. But then I heard about Ananda just shortly before I graduated. And really, for some unknown reason, it was just the grace of God. I said, okay, I'll go there, I'll learn. And I brought Autobiography with me. And I sat and I read it, and then that was the moment where it opened up to me because I was in an environment. I had the satsang of other people who were trying, not the college kids running around and, trying to graduate and all that, but I had the satsang of people that were really trying to meditate and go deep, and then it opened up for me. So I know I couldn't have done it on my own. I know I wouldn't if I would have walked away. But having that support was what kept me year by year, decade by decade, steady on the spiritual path.
Would like to meet you personally sometime, if you permit me.
Okay.
Sorry, what was your question on satsang or sectarianism?
Sectarian and religious system.
So how do sectarian systems help us achieve the goal of spirituality?
Sectarian systems. Oh, okay.
System.
Well, Vivekananda said it is a blessing to be born in a religion, but a curse to die in one. So sectarianism can help direct us on a path, but ultimately God is one, and there are many pathways to that same truth. We have, a few years ago, after 50 years, we built a big new temple at Ananda village, our headquarters, and we called it the Temple of Light. And when we dedicated that, we had niches. It was a round room about this size. We had niches around the walls, and in each of those niches, we had a space and a symbol for a different religion. So, and then when we dedicated the Temple of Light, we asked a rabbi and an imam and a
Sikh and a priest and a Buddhist and someone representing Hinduism.
right. And we asked them all to come and talk about how their particular religion addressed the question or the subject of light in their religion, because light is something that permeates all different sectarian expressions. And so it's good to have a path that you follow, but it is not good to have that path create I don't know, a wall around you that does not allow you to see the value in other people and other spiritual expressions.
Okay, well, maybe
Would you like to do one more question?
One more.
Because,
this gentleman in the front row with the blue shirt, Nitesh.
unfortunately, time for the last question, but I'm sure all of us will find time for interaction with them, maybe in the days to come or the weeks to come.
Thank you so much for the talk. You were talking about how the karma can be negated, bad karma, good karma. As Hindu, you're brought up with this concept that there can never be a full cancellation of karma. You have to go through what you have sown. Yes, there may be a little bit of softening of that, and especially that you carry it over to the next life, and that's where you start off. So Your previous answer did help me with a little bit, but the other question that I had really was japa, and the fact that Gita talks about how a simple devotion is more important in Kali Yuga than anything else.
There are many ways to work with our karma. First of all, the question, do we have to negate the karma? Yes, that's a spiritual truth. Karma has to be negated. So think of it like an echo or a sound that goes out and the echo is coming back. That echo is going to come back no matter what we do. So we have to experience that. But Swami Kriyananda used a very interesting example. He said, suppose that there's energy coming back toward us, because if we've been angry, we've sent out angry vibrations, and so we're going to receive anger back in order to help us learn that anger is not a good strategy for life. He said, but if we're still acting in an angry way, it's like we're acting and anger is coming toward us and we're running toward it and we're going to smack together. But he said, if now in this life we have retained our own center, we've been able to control ourselves, we're no longer getting angry, we're moving away from that. And so now the karma is coming and it may just tap us. And so we don't experience it in the same way. But how do we burn up karma? One of the things of Kriya Yoga is that the seeds of karma reside in the spine, in the subtle spine. And we might think, well, how can that many seeds reside in our spine? Well, on that level, each cell has DNA. That DNA, if it were stretched out, could be as long as a football field in each and every one of trillions of cells in your body. So if we can hold energy like that in our physical body, think of our astral body. So all of those reactions, the seeds reside in the subtle spine. Yogananda said that by moving energy up and down that central spine, as we do in Kriya or other spiritual practices, we burn up those seeds of karma before they germinate. And so, yes, that karma has to be dealt with, but it does not have to be taken out, planted in a field, and have it grow more karma for us. But we can deal with it on a subtle level. But yes, everything has to eventually go back to zero. And so if we've done a good deed, that too, it's not like we have to experience bad, but we have to ultimately understand that the good deed was not done by us. It was done by God acting through the particular incarnation of that play. But yeah, karma is a tricky subject because only a master can see the intricacies of what life and what actions and how to work with it. But there's one rule of thumb that we can all use. Anything that you want to get rid of, any tendency, any trait that you want to get rid of, work on producing the opposite kind of energy, and that will neutralize it. So if you want to get rid of greed, then give your resources to people, and that will neutralize the tendency toward greediness. Anger, try to offer peace to people, and so on. So the rule of thumb is put your energy into creating the opposite of that which you want to get rid of, not by practicing more of what you've already done wrong.
And I'll just close very briefly and then we'll move on to our next thing. Remember, I think you came in a little bit late, so that's no problem, but I could tell you were paying very close attention. Jyotish read a blog that at the beginning of his talk called A Spiritual Report Card. And so for each of us, Yoganandaji really recommended introspection. Look at the reoccurring patterns in your life that cause you or other people around you suffering. And those, it's like getting a report card. Oh, I got a C in listening to other people. Maybe I need to work on that. And so look at the patterns. Those are just karmic patterns. Some things you'll get a straight A on. I'm very good at kindness, but I don't always listen to what people are trying to tell me. And so look at the patterns that you need to work on and rub your hands together and say, let's get busy. Let's balance the karma in this lifetime. And then I share this from my own experience. There have been things in patterns of thought and feeling that I thought, I can never get rid of these. They're just a part of me. But I never stopped trying. And little by little, you look back and you think, they're gone. I'm free of that. So have the faith that we can change if we put out the effort and sensitively look at our own lives and say, this is what I need to work on. Okay, my friends, this has been a joy. It's been wonderful.
Both of hands and 2 little flowers.
Yeah, she has some announcements. Yes.
Thank you so much, Jyotish and Devi ji. This was wonderful, truly powerful. This book is wonderful. This was the 6th book that came in the Touch series, and some of us have had the pleasure of reading it this morning. And truly, it's just wonderful to have this opportunity. Just wanted to take a little moment to felicitate with you with flowers and invite. We had a lot of support from the club committee to organize this event. Dr. Ojas is a part of the chairman of the subcommittee, library subcommittee. Mr. Kiran Mehta is the office bearer, the secretary. And if we could have them here with you, just quickly, Chignasa and Ashok, if you could.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Ojas.
Thank you.
Come here.
Thank you.
With the blessings of both of you.
Thank you. And thank you for all your help.
Vandana. Sorry, Dr. Ojas, if you could just come back. We wanted to gift. We'd like to gift, if you could cut the ribbon for the official launch of the book.
Oh,
and
yes.
Gift a copy of it to the library subcommittee. This will be available to all members at the library, and you could rent it whenever you want. We also have Jyotish and Devi have signed copies over here at the table. You could get a copy for yourself.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will give you this copy. This is already signed. And it's what we use today. So.
Thank you.
God,
Thank you.
Thank you. It
Thank
was so,
you.
you were
What a
so
wonderful
receptive. It
facility.
was wonderful speaking
Yes.
to you.
My daughter-in-law your signed board,
Oh,
and she keeps under her pillow every day. She reads.
oh, what a joy.
get this book and by your hand, please do signature for me.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some signed ones over
Signed
there.
copies which they have already
Okay,
signed,
you will
and
get
you
it.
can get a copy from the table here.
Right.
We also have our Yogananda store, which you may want to browse and see some of our spiritual products. We have a beautiful table which is called
Let's
the
get a
Healing Prayer
photo.
Table.
Yeah.
This is
Let's-
something that
let's
we
take a
practice
photo.
at Ananda.
Yeah.
We have our team over there. If you'd like to submit
Thank
a
you very
healing
much.
prayer for your loved ones or for yourself, we shall do that for you. And lastly, there's Anoop there with the astrobangle table. If you'd like to have a look over there. Danaji and Adityaji.
She'll send it
thank
to
you.
Rima and Rima.
Thank you so much. Thank
It
you.
was
Namaste.
a joy to be
Namaste.
here.
So that's it. I'm just gonna have Mitesh say
Okay.
close and then we're good to go.
Okay.
I'll just have Mitesh say we're good to go and
Oh,
then
great.
Mitesh, you want to just end it and sort of done? No? Others do.
So once again, I hope all of you enjoyed the session. And I would like to remind that the session was recorded online, so in case you want to tune in to listening to some of the wisdom which was shared today, you will always be able to do that on our respective channels. All the details are available on the desk which are here. And I would once again like to really, truly, warmly thank you, Nayaswamis, Devi, and Jyotish. We've had the pleasure of their company in Mumbai for the last few days, and they've been meeting lots and lots of people, trying to share very practical and real examples of inspiration that we can truly pick up and learn and implement. And in case some of you wish to learn some of the basic techniques of meditation which was spoken about today, you will have an opportunity a couple of weekends from now. The date is the 9th of November. We will be having a basic course on Learn to Meditate at a Worli Center as well as at an ashram which is there in Madani. Yes, we will share all the details.
Tables here will help you.
Thank you once again, and I wish all of you all the very best.
Thank you.
Could we just get one group picture with Dhyanaji?
Sure.